Local 27 here in London. Welcome to all of you and all the people that are supporting the Health Coalition. I think louder!
I can't hear you.
Technical difficulties. Is it working now?
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, I'm good. Let's make some noise! I want to make a lot of noise. We want to send some messaging to our politicians to say no more cuts. Co-host here with my brother Peter Prigmanis, and we're going to have some songs. We're going to do some marching. I want to remind people to please watch the meters. They will ticket you if you're overtime, and we'll get this thing going. So let's send a message to our government and make some noise. Messages for Minister Matthews on the balloons, and we'll either be tying them to her porch or we'll be giving to her in some fashion. So you can go over, and there's magic markers and balloons here throughout the rally. If you could do that, that would be great. So our first speaker today is going to be Natalie Mira. Natalie is the Executive Director of the Ontario Health Coalition, an organization representing more than 500,000 people in its networks, which encompasses more than 70 local chapters and more than 400 organizations across Ontario. She has spent the last 14 years building the Health Coalition into the largest, broadest public interest group of healthcare in Ontario. Outside Deb Matthew's office here in London. Deb Matthews is a senior cabinet minister in the Ontario government, responsible in her position as president of the Treasury Board for implementing the cuts and privatization of our public services, including our hospitals. Particularly important that we meet here today in London to send a clear message to this government to stop the hospital cuts. All across Ontario, and especially all across southwestern Ontario, we have seen massive cuts to nurses, to hospital beds, to health professionals, to the support staff who make our hospitals work and are vital to patient care. We have seen the decimation of services in the small and rural hospitals, as we'll see in a moment, all across southwestern Ontario. We've seen massive cuts to the large town hospitals, and yet in every large town in Ontario, in London, in Windsor, in Sarnia, in Kitchener, the hospitals have already experienced bed cuts for 20 years. Ontario now has the fewest hospital beds left of any province in Canada. We have the least amount of nursing care per patient of any province in the country. Fund our hospitals at the lowest rate of anywhere in the country. And now the government continues to put out messages saying, oh, we have 6,000 more doctors or so many thousand more nurses. What they're not saying is, since 2003, it is now 2015, the population has grown. And in fact, we're laying off nurses by the hundreds or even thousands across Ontario. Health professional services are being privatized all across Ontario, and patients have to pay out of pocket for those services. And at the end of the day, we actually have less hospital care left than anywhere else in Canada. I'm underlining this because these are the result of choices. They are not necessities. Our government in Ontario raises the least revenue of any province. Why? Because we've engaged in the biggest tax cuts, mainly for the wealthy and for corporations of any province in the country. We fund all our public services at the lowest rate of any province in the country. That's every public service, from if you wonder why you face the most out-of-pocket healthcare costs of any province in Canada, that's the reason. These are choices that are being made on our behalf, and yet the public knows almost nothing about them. We have never been given a choice about whether we want to see frontline healthcare services cut, whether we want to see our nursing staff force decimated, our small town hospitals gutted of their services, our large town hospitals running at such a state of overcapacity, of overcrowding, that there are stretchers regularly lining the hallways, people waiting for days for beds, ambulances unable to offload because the emergency departments are full, surgeries canceled because there are no beds for patients to recover in. This is a shame for our province. It's a blight on our record. I won't keep you long, but I'm here to ask you to join me in sounding the alarm to our communities. Let's ask our communities to stand up with us. Regular people of all stripes like you, seniors who care about your local healthcare services, nurses and health professionals and support workers, doctors who care about your patients, community members who are concerned about protecting the values that underlie our community, about protecting the idea of taking care of each other, providing for each other when we're sick and when we're elderly, when we're least able to pay, and of keeping healthcare public, because that is a core Canadian value. So let's join together in raising the alarm. Let's raise the alarm. London, come on right up, you guys. Yes. Okay, here you are.
Okay, London's hospitals, 475,000 hours per year of hands-on nursing care cuts since 2012. Cuts to vascular cardiology, mental health, ICU, dialysis, fertility clinic, inpatient oncology, urgent care, IV therapy cuts. 32 million more in 32 million this year and 37 million last year.
Happening in London at the London Health Sciences Centre. Hospitals running at 108% capacity. This year, 194,000 hours hands-on patient care cut. And I think with my family, we've just gone through it.
Happy birthday to Penny Moore.
Okay, St. Joseph's Healthcare here in London. Beds cut from Veterans Care Program. 32 positions eliminated in 2014, plus 34 nurses cut in 2013, along with the care they provide.
You got it on the top. The cuts at the top.
Blue Waterhouse, Petrolia, Charlotte, Eleanor, Ingerhart Hospital. Endoscopy unit closed in 2014 equals patients often travel further from home and pay more out-of-pocket fees.
So Oxford is here, and Oxford had 3 hospitals. We don't even own this one anymore. It's been privatized. And 23 complex continuing care beds have been cut from that hospital. In Ingersoll, the outpatient lab has been closed since July of 2014, and it's privatized. So the tests are less accurate, and they're much slower to get. And people end up paying out of pocket to get them as well. And they cut 9 critical care beds from there in the same rural county. And if in Tillsonburg you want eye care, they tell you to drive to Ingersoll. And if you're in critical care, sorry, the 6 beds have been cut from there. So across our county, everything's horrible, and then they ship you down to London, and you just heard about London.
In Stratford in 2014, we lost 9 rehab beds, 13 CC beds, and 3 surgical beds. We're down to 113 beds, where patients now have to drive to Clinton, to Seaford, to St. Mary's, which is almost 45 kilometers away. Some don't have vehicles to drive. Shame on them. services closed, forcing patients to travel further for care they need. Cut 50% of the remaining medical beds and only 4 are left. Cut 30% of remaining complex continuing care beds. Plan to close all remaining CCC beds. Shame on them.
Will I read it? Yeah, shame for sure. Chatham Kent Health Alliance, 56,000 hours per year of hands-on care, cut between 2012 and 2014. 22 beds cut in 2012 alone. Shame! I'm an exhausted registered nurse with little hope for the future. Wallace Ferguson and Ham District Hospital closure of 10 remaining complex continuing care beds in the lab. Only 5 remaining beds in the emergency department left.
Guelph, St. Joseph's Long-Term Care and Rehabilitation Hospital has over the last year lost over 30,000 hours of hands-on care in their complex care unit. Guelph General Hospital has plans to eliminate positions at the RPN level, but suddenly changed and eliminated RNs instead and cut the hours of ward clerks. Guelph General Hospital has also cut every single outpatient service over the last 10 years that was proven to be preventative and educational for the community, dumping diabetics into the streets without doctors, dumping people with cardiac problems who are mostly senior into the streets without transportation. They'd have to all go to another town, which then lost its services.
86,000 hours per year hands-on services cut in Windsor between 2013 and 2014. 30 acute care beds cut in 2013. And you know, with the sale of 60% of Hydro One, we could expect a heck of a lot more cuts in our health care if we don't raise more heck in this province. They have not had a mandate to make these cuts, nor have they had a mandate to put the Hydro One up for sale, but they're doing it anyways. When are these people going to start listening?
Okay, Kitchener-Waterloo Grand River Hospital, 90,000 hours per year of hands-on care being cut. This is on top of 30,000 hours per year of hands-on care cut in 2013. And the hospital is facing $7.5 million deficit this year with more cuts expected. Now, because a lot of the work has been handed out to private clinics, we had 5 patients who were treated at Tri-City Colonoscopy Clinic in Kitchener on Christmas Eve 2013 were infected with hepatitis C. That's what private for-profit clinics do for you. There's strong evidence that patient-to-patient transmission of hepatitis C was due to a lapse in infection protection and control practices at the clinic. Today in the Waterloo Region Record, it was reported that the region will need 150 new hospital beds or alternatives to hospitals by 2025. That need comes from population growth and an aging population. In the next decade, the number of people 65 and older, people like myself, will be up by 50%. So that's a scary thought. They're cutting hospital beds while we need more. And this is not the time to make cuts in funding. It's the time for an increase in funding. Yay.
Blue Water Health, Sarnia General Hospital, 78,000 hours per year of hands-on patient care to be cut. This affects ICU, ER, medicine, geriatrics, palliative, mental health, surgical. In 2013, 66,000 hours of hands-on care were cut.
Okay, St. Thomas, cuts to medical records department. Elgin General Hospital 23, privatized transcription. And also closure of jobs training program at the Southwest Center. And something I don't think's been mentioned is the trade laws. Under privatization, the private clinics are able to sue public hospitals over lost profits. So who's going to suffer in that scenario, right?
Leamington District Memorial Hospital, the obstetrics and maternity ward was cut, funding was cut for them, but thanks to concerned citizens like this, it was saved again, so now we have it back for now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to Jim Kennedy, UNIFOR, Local 27 here in London. I just want to I just want to notice and give thanks for our Keep Inside workers. QP 101, Local 101 has just shown up to our rally. And it's imperative that we do that for each other, show support for each other. And I would suggest that when we're done here today that we all go down to City Hall and join QP 101 for a half hour on their line. Thank you.
Noise. I'm going to ask Shirley Sherman to come up and speak to the crowd. Oh, here she is. Shirley is a retired nurse here to speak about preserving public health care.
Well, and specifically home care. And I have to think that the Ontario government is got to be glad we're here today. They've spent a huge amount. They've got to be. And Dr. Hoskins has got to be. He needs money to do his job. The Ontario government has to give it to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and that's who we need to talk to, and they gotta be glad we're here. I want to talk a little bit about the cuts in home care. Palliative care used to be separately funded. Now it's part of the hours the CCAC can give to home care. So palliative care is at the mercy of whatever hours CCAC can come up with. Long-term care patients are not home care suitable patients. Long-term care people who need that level of care, that's where they need to be. Complex chronic care, clients, patients who need that kind of care, that's where they need to be, not home care. Home care cannot deliver that kind of care. It needs to do what it does best, and it needs to be funded to do it. At all levels of people coming out of hospital, trying to rehab, and for people with chronic multiple diagnoses, need home care. They need, in order to live their lives as they wish to. This level of care is not being funded. People from hospitals are going to retirement homes because of inadequate long-term care and home care. That is not the right level of care. I did it myself, and fortunately, did not need heavy care, but I know what retirement homes can deliver, and CCAC has to work with them, but they only deliver retirement home services. So therefore, when the worker isn't there, these people do not have their health monitored. We ask the government to please work on getting rid of unneeded expenses expenses in long-term care, in home care, so that there's money, adequate money left between the patient and the worker for the care to be delivered, for the time amount to be delivered, and for the right worker to be delivering the right care.
Next, I'm going to ask Gail Beattie to come up and speak. Gail Beattie is a member of the St. Mary's Community Action Group that has been fighting to save hospital services in the Huron-Perth Healthcare Alliance. She is here to share the story of the local patients and their hospital experience.
Hi, I got started at this battle back in 2009 when our ER was slated to be closed in St. Mary's, and we were expected in our great winter weather to travel into Stratford, which wasn't supposed to be an issue for us. And we fought, community members, nurses, support workers, and our little small group of 12 of us to get the cut stopped. We were successful in that with the help of the Ontario Health Coalition, and we now have our ER open 24/7. And we are fighting bed realignment, which we are told over and over that it is the best for us because there isn't enough money, and if we don't agree to bed realignment, then we may not have a hospital at all. Bed realignment is very difficult for us in our community because if you need a rehab bed, for myself, I need to travel 40 kilometers to Seaforth to receive care, which I once was able to receive in our community hospital. Our community hospital was built by our community. We had 50 beds. Now we have 20 beds. We have no obstetrics. We have no surgical. And we just lost 5 acute care beds. There are some stories. The one story in particular really expresses what happens when the government decides that bed realignment and other decisions they make that on paper look good, but isn't so good for us as members of the community, as patients. This was given to us by a daughter of a patient that was 92. My mother is 95 years old and lives independently in her own apartment in a seniors complex with assistance available. Her health is reasonable for her age. The fall of 2014, she contacted a cold, which did not clear up and resulted in a cough that did not go away. She had a history of pneumonia, which caused concern, and on November 17, 2014, her breathing became labored and the cough worsened. She called for assistance from the manager of services in the complex. The staff was concerned, and I was called, and we agreed that she should go to the hospital. Because my mother was so weak, an ambulance was called. She was admitted to a hospital in Stratford and stayed for 1 week. No real determination was made of what was causing confusion, just that the pneumonia was ruled out. She was diagnosed a week later. During the week of the 24th, her condition deteriorated and she became disorientated. On Sunday, November 30th, she had a very serious episode and was convinced that men were in her apartment, and as a result of this confusion, she fell out of bed. There did not appear to be serious injuries except for bruising. On Monday, December 1st, she was considerably worse. Her doctor visited her home and recommended that she be taken to the hospital. She called the hospital and that she felt that her mom's electrolytes were out of balance. Her doctor was advised that she would be admitted to Stratford General. Her doctor doesn't have rights at the hospital, and by 11 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she was kept in the hallway on a gurney until 5:30. The paramedic was required to sit with her, which took him out of service while Stratford was in dire need of ambulance as he sat with his patient. Until the supervisor and the paramedics had arrived, we were in the hallway. I overheard the supervisor say that he had no ambulances available in Stratford as they were all on other calls, with one sitting in emergency, not able to leave due to a backlog with emergency department. At 6 o'clock, she was finally in a bed in the emergency room waiting to see the doctor. At 10 o'clock, we were told that she would be admitted. And after advising us they were just waiting for a bed, we were told that she would be going to Clinton, approximately 50 kilometers from Stratford. No food had been offered to her, and I was told that they were out of food, and I could get something from the machine by the emergency department doors. By this time, my mom had a bad headache and was getting more and more agitated. At 2:30 in the morning of December 2nd, my mother was bundled into a patient transfer, which I call a glorified name for a truck, and driven to Clinton. She, by this time, was totally confused and did not know where Clinton was or where she was. I returned to my home and left the next morning for Clinton. When I arrived, she was crying and could not figure out where she was. I stayed for most of the day. The next morning, I again returned to Clinton. Upon arrival, learned that she had fallen out of bed. By this time, she was black and blue from the fall from her apartment, which started this journey, and now the fall in the hospital. I had to tell her each time I saw her that she was in Clinton. The confusion was still evident. On Thursday of that week, she was again bundled into the patient transfer truck and returned to Stratford for a CAT scan and then back to Clinton, even though there is a CAT scan in Godrich, 17 kilometers away from Clinton. The Clinton Hospital, upon our arrival, was under construction at the nurses' station and was demolished, and a new one being constructed. Her first day was spent with the sounds of construction drilling and hammering just down the hall, going all day. After Mom's fall, I've lost my page. There we are. She was moved closer to the temporary nurses' station. The rooms were previously used as a maternity ward with no modifications done to accommodate that appeared to be a ward for the very elderly. Mom's next adventure happened in this new room. In attempting to go to the washroom with her walker, it would not fit in the washroom by the toilet in order to assist her in using the toilet. Again, she fell, seriously injuring her shoulder. The bruising was significant. However, she continues with physiotherapy in C4. She was discharged around the 15th of December, was assigned assistance from CCAC. My sister, my husband, and I tried to visit every day because she was needy. The telephone was hooked up for her, but she wasn't able to call me as it was long distance from Clinton to Stratford. I called her every morning to reassure her that things were okay. Nothing in this rearrangement of beds makes any sense for patients or their families. There is no pharmacy in Clinton, and drugs are sent up daily from taxis from Stratford. Closing beds in more modern hospital in Stratford and transferring patients to less desirable locations makes no sense. We live in a snow belt on a highway that is frequently closed in winter. I am truly grateful that on the morning of December 2nd, the roads were at least clear. The thoughts of the truck in a ditch with my mother on board leaves me with nightmares. The only bright spot in an otherwise nightmare scenario was the staff at Clinton Hospital. The managers who make these feeble decisions can take no credit for this. The nurses and doctors were extremely caring in a very difficult situation. It was obvious that the facility was not ready for the changes that were implemented on December 1st. A former maternity ward is not suitable for a ward for seniors. It felt very much like a warehouse for seniors, and is this what we have come to the treatment of our seniors who have built this country and province? I truly hope not. The whole episode has aged my mother greatly. She has always been an experienced, bright, capable individual. She now has trouble processing things and has great confusion. And this is only one of many stories of patients that have been transferred into St. Mary's from Stratford who have lost contact with their loved ones because they too are elderly and can't get to visit them when they are there. I hope things change. And before I close, there is one quote I'd like to read, and it has the approach to healthcare should be to design a system that fits the people, not to fit the people into a system.
Thank you, Gail. I'm going to ask Charles again to come up and say a few words. Charles is a medical student out of the University of Western Ontario.
Hey, thank you very much. And before I start, I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here today, standing up and speaking out. And you know, it's the desire to help people, no matter who they are, what their situation in life is, no matter their socioeconomic standing, that brought me and a lot of my classmates into medicine. And it's a story that we just heard that brings me here today. Because what's happening in the healthcare system in Canada today is not acceptable.
No!
Alright, so they told me to brief, so I've got 3 brief points to make. And before I start, I have to say that the opinions I'm about to share are my opinions only and not those of the University of Western Ontario or public medicine.
We hear you, brother. We hear you.
Okay, the first point I have to make is our healthcare system is in crisis. Our healthcare system was not designed for the healthcare situation we're facing in the province today, or in the country today. Our healthcare system across this country was designed in mind for when the population, the average age of the population was 40, when they were healthy, and when they had reasons to go in the hospital was for acute events. Now we have a population that's aging with more chronic and complex problems, and our healthcare system is not prepared to face that. So what the province doing to address these changes? Well, what they're doing is exactly the opposite of what they should be doing. They're cutting nursing beds, they're cutting nursing staff, and they're cutting complex and continuing care. That is not the kind of change we need to fix our healthcare. The second point I'd like to make is that these cuts are not cuts in isolation. They are part of an ongoing campaign against public health care in this country. Our Medicare system in this country is already very fragile. We think we have 100% health care coverage, but in fact we do not. Medicare in Canada covers only approximately 70% of all health care cuts. It does not cover out-of-hospital medical costs, does not cover dental health, it does not cover eye health. And these cuts come as the most recent outrage in a series of outrages in the healthcare system in Canada. First in these outrages was cuts to refugee care that was made at the federal level in 2014. And even though the Supreme Court has said these cuts are unconstitutional, the federal government are still vowing to fight the courts and continue to implement these cuts. Shame on them. Second thing is Medicare. Even though our healthcare system covers the costs that we incur when we are in hospital, it does not cover drug costs for anyone under 60 when they're out of hospital. That is a shame, and it's not the intention of the healthcare system. And I have to talk about the recent cuts to doctor salaries in Ontario. Even though I think doctor salaries could be cut, I think the provincial government is doing this in all the wrong ways. Not so long ago, we had 900,000 Ontarians, think about 900,000 Ontarians who did not have access to a family doctor. That number has been cut down to a tenth. But what the provincial government is doing with their cuts is cutting family doctors. They're making cuts to family medicine, and family medicine is where we need the least cuts. And all this in the context of a failure of the federal government to renew the Canada Health Accord. Their intention, don't make mistake, is to discontinue public health care in Canada, and we have to stand up, and we have to fight against that. Okay, I think I'm talking too much, so I'll quickly share, I think, 2.5 stories with you guys today.
Go for it.
And the first story I'd like to share is a story from class. You know, we were sitting in class at the beginning of the year, and the question was asked, what is health? How do you define health? And the best answer, which I'm going to steal from a friend of mine, he said, healthcare is a resource that people draw on to allow them to continue living the way they would like to live. Think about that. Healthcare is a community resource that people draw on to be able to do the things that they do in their everyday lives. So keep that definition in mind when I share the next 2 stories. So part of one of the greatest privileges of being a physician and being a medical student is getting to share in the stories of our patients. And, you know, I'm going to share with you 2 of these stories. The first story is we had a 40-year-old gentleman come to the clinic with knee pain, and he was working as a carpenter or laborer, and his knee pain was preventing him from... One story? All right. So I'll share you this story. And his knee pain was preventing him from working. It was destroying his livelihood. He didn't know how he was going to pay the bills. So what is the best treatment for knee pain? It's not really any kind of medication that we give. It's physiotherapy. And what happens to physiotherapy? Well, the government's delisted it from services that are covered under Medicare. So now this gentleman who's struggling with his knee pain, can't work, about to lose his livelihood, can't get the physiotherapy that he needs to live the way that he wants to be able to live. And that is the true impact of these healthcare cuts. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming out and speaking up against these cuts, because healthcare is important, not only for sick people, but for everyone in this province, in this city.
Thank you for coming out! Dang right.
Okay, everyone, can everyone make some noise? We're going to do a bit of a chant. Hold it away, not too close. Okay, everybody sing along with me. We want health care, not welfare.
We want health care, not welfare.
We want health care,
not welfare.
We want health care, not welfare. We want health care, not welfare. Okay, keep up the noise, make some noise.
Well, greetings, fellow Canadians, fellow citizens, those of you who are celebrating this very valuable jewel that we call Medicare. I can only thank you one and all for coming out here. I'm Peter Bergmanis, co-chair of the London Health Coalition. I see very familiar faces here, and I know that you're all the great defenders of this very proud institution that we're celebrating here today. I'm going to introduce our next speaker now, and it is Sarah LaBelle from OPSEU. She is a hospital and professional division leader, and I'm not going to explain any further. She's got everything she needs to say. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I'm standing here today with Sandy Blanchard. She's a medical laboratory technologist and the local president at London Health Sciences and surrounding area, and I'm going to give her a couple of minutes before I speak.
Okay, yeah, I represent a lot of, over 1,400 of the diagnostic and rehab professionals that work in all of the London hospitals, and I got to tell you, we are really facing serious impacts from all the cuts that are happening. We are constantly working under increased workload with no extra staff to do it, and all that does at the end of the day is it increases your wait times, and it decreases the availability of the testing and results that allow you to get proper health care. So we really have to make sure that we get the Liberal government to understand that by all these cuts, all they're doing is really working to the detriment of all of us. And we're the ones that need health care the most.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and obviously we're all here for the same reason. We're here because we believe in public health care. We believe in Medicare. And what's happening right now to our hospitals is a conservative effort to privatize and destroy Medicare. And so it's a great sign right over there, the symbolism of a skeleton, because that's pretty much the death of Medicare. If you cut hospitals, that is it. Public health care is done. And what we're seeing is Deb Matthew started this. This is completely her fault, so it's why we're sitting here. It's a great day to be at Deb Matthew's, and she's not here. She's conveniently avoiding us, as have all the other Liberal MPPs. I'm a medical laboratory technologist, and I represent all of the health professionals across the province of Ontario. 24,000 hospital professionals, physiotherapists, dietitians, speech-language pathologists, laboratories, diagnostic imaging, all of those services that from conception to death, we're there every step of the way with the people in our communities to help them recover, be diagnosed, and get the proper services they need. And here today what we have in the province of Ontario is, you remember the movie Field of Dreams? Yeah. If you build it, they will come. Well, this is Liberals' vision, is the view of a field of dreams. Essentially, if we tell you that the services are going into the community, they're just going to be there. So, Mythbusters 101, those services are not in the community. Not once has Eric Hoskins talked about the lack of OHIP physiotherapy in the community. Not once. He just says it's in the community, but he hasn't spoken about that. So we have people that cannot get physiotherapy. They cannot get back to work. Not once has he talked about, and I saw the parade of cuts coming through, which makes me get a little hot and bothered, and my heart's palpitating, and I need health care. But Alexandra Hospital, outpatient lab. When the Liberal government decided to cut all of outpatient laboratories, they cut 250 access points for people in the communities in Ontario. So those people now either have to pay to get their blood work drawn, they have to travel further, or they wait for 2 hours after they fasted all night to get their blood work drawn. And that's shameful, because healthcare is about taking care of people. It's not about them waiting longer. It's not about them walking away without getting the care they need. So what we're here today is to tell Deb Matthew, again, she started this, and Eric Hoskins, the Minister of Health, is that there is another alternative. We can fund health care properly. Our hospitals are in the communities that we live in. They are part of the community. So if we fund our hospitals, we're funding health care in the community. And it means that people have access to public health care and do not have to pay out of pocket. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming out.
For you at this moment, Katha Fortier and Nancy McMurphy, both from UNIFOR. Katha is UNIFOR's first Ontario director. After several years working in a small rural hospital in Nipigon, Ontario, Katha has held various positions, including Vice President of UNIFOR Local 229 and President of the former CAW Ontario Healthcare Council. And Nancy McMurphy is a healthcare worker herself and President of Local 302. Take it away.
Thanks, Peter. Hey, where's Deb Matthews? What is she afraid of? Does she not want to talk to the people? This is shameful that nobody's home in Deb Matthews' office today. Because she knew we were coming.
Yep.
She's not heard the end of us, though. I'll tell you, she is the Minister of Austerity. And the people of Ontario have had enough austerity already. Ontario. And I remember the Mike Harris days. I think there's a few people old enough to remember the Harris Restructuring Commission that flew through our communities and cut our hospital beds. We lost 7 hospital beds to that commission. You know what this government is doing? They're cutting our hospital beds by stealth. They aren't even talking to the people. They have set up limbs and they have removed the boards of any power in those hospitals and those communities,
and they are just making cut after cut after cut. And once we get those cuts, we can't provide the services anymore. How many people are working at overcapacity in their workplaces today with not enough beds, with people in hallways and closets? Discharging patients that you know should not be sent out that door because it's not safe to do so. It is time to change. It is time to fight for public health care, and I can tell you the mood is changing. People are tired of austerity. We know that our hospitals will not survive without funding increases that match inflation and match population growth and match aging in this province. We need to demand better. Let's do a chant. I say health care, you say we care. Health care.
We care.
Health care.
We care.
Health care.
We care.
Woo, thank you, sisters and brothers, for coming.
Boy, what a great day for a rally, eh? We got the healthcare gods shining down on us.
Beautiful day.
Our healthcare system is broken, and today we're joining together to demand that it's fixed. Our elected governments, both provincial and federal, seem to have made it their mission to turn public health care in Canada into another profit business. Their mantra is privatize, privatize, privatize. And each service that is delisted and every bed that is cut turns into one more horror story in all of our communities. In many of our small town community hospitals, you've already heard, we've seen departments closing, we've seen beds being reduced, we've seen patients being rerouted to the larger hospitals. And then the larger hospitals are having their budgets absolutely gutted. We've heard that there's a possible decrease of close to $30 million in LHSC coming next year. Closures of beds, decreases of staff, and then they get the influx of patients from the hospitals that can't provide the services any longer. A logical person would call this a recipe for disaster. But we all know common sense and logic are not prerequisites for politicians. Minister Matthews, you held the role of Minister of Health and Long-Term Care from 2009 until 2014. During those years, we saw a grocery list of scandals. There was e-health, the chemotherapy debacle, the Orange Air ambulance fiasco, and I would suggest that her performance evaluation should have been incredibly negative. And yet, she now holds the role of President of the Treasury Board. Just about 2 weeks ago, our local London newspaper had a story about a young woman from our community that took her life. Jennifer had taken on the role of patient advocate in March of last year when she blew the whistle on the crisis that left mental health care patients sleeping on floors in emergency departments. Many of these patients have been waiting for several days for beds in an overcrowded psychiatric ward. One more glaring example of how the cuts are affecting individuals. This young woman had struggled with depression and anxiety for several years. And last month, she was transported to the hospital on 3 separate occasions in 5 days as a result of attempted suicide. The first question that most of us here today should be asking is why was she discharged so quickly each and every time? There's clearly a huge hole in mental health care, and with ongoing demands for hospitals to do more for less, this young lady, sadly, is now a statistic. The same week that this article appeared, I found an advertisement that was inserted into my local newspaper, and it was giving this message: a body scan can save your life. They were offering a variety of individual scans. There was lung scans, bone scans, pelvic scans, and of course you could get the ultimate package, the total body scan, each with a cost associated. These appointments could be scheduled 7 days a week by a company that's been providing medical testing for over 20 years. Now, being old school, the thought of paying for out of pocket for these tests infuriated me, but as I read on, my agitation only grew. These tests were being performed at the Fairfield Inn in Port Huron, Michigan. Your test results would be mailed to you within 21 working days. Apparently, word is circulated to our American neighbors of the incredible wait times, backlogs, and reduction of services in our hospitals, and they're intending to capitalize on this opportunity. Sisters and brothers, this is not acceptable. Is this the direction that we want our Canadian healthcare to take? There seems to be some misunderstanding of the importance of a renewed health court. Many people seem to think that this is only going to affect healthcare workers. But let's be clear.
If our federal government does not step up to the plate and ensure stability with adequate funding for health care, this has the potential to affect each and every Canadian. It's time for demonstrative change and not the ongoing lip service that our elected officials have offered us. It is our collective responsibility to take on this fight back, not just to protect, but also improve our treasured public health care. This October, may I remind you, we have a federal election. That's going to present an amazing opportunity for change. I challenge each and every one of you here today to not only participate in the election, but to share the message with your family and friends. It's time to heave Steve. Solidarity.
Hello, do we have Karen Bertrand here? Karen, let me introduce you first. Our next speaker is Karen Bertrand. She's an RN and currently serving her 4th term as Vice President in Region 5 of the Ontario Nurses Association Board of Directors. And in that capacity, she holds and represents thousands of registered nurses, allied health professionals working in the southwest region of Ontario, including several counties that I can't read right now. So take it away, Karen.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out. As Peter said, I represent about 12,000 exhausted registered nurses and allied health professionals across southwestern Ontario. ONA has been sounding the alarm on these cuts for years. The services that we provide are vital to the health of our community. The priority of this government is to freeze hospital-based funding while moving more and more of our health care services out of the hospitals and into the communities. And the reality is there is not enough care in the community to sustain this. Registered nurses are extremely concerned about the extent of the understaffing that exists in hospitals in southwestern Ontario and across this province, and the resulting impact of quality care to our patients. Hospital-based funding has been frozen now for 4 consecutive years. This means our hospitals are struggling and have been struggling for multiple years with insufficient funding to cover the cost of inflation and population growth. Depriving our hospitals of much-needed funding to provide services is untenable and causing patient care and patient outcomes to suffer. Our hospitals are supposed to be here to care for our communities when we need it. And yet we are experiencing nursing layoffs and many thousands of hours of nursing care lost to our patients. It is unacceptable for the provincial government to demand that patient care be cut to balance our hospital's budget. Hospitals should never cut at the bedside, should never cut the jobs that provide direct patient care. And now with hospitals determined to balance their budgets on the backs of their vital nursing staff, they plan to take even more nurses away from the bedside. Shame is right. This completely disregards the health and safety and quality of care for our patients. You heard the parade of cuts, and if you were doing the math, it comes to over 1 million hours of care cut just in southwestern Ontario, and this is going on across the province. These cuts are in every program. Our smaller communities are suffering from lack of access because the problem is the programs that used to be there are no longer there, and it's causing a crushing workload in our regional centers. And what's so frustrating again and again for all of those on the front line is we see healthcare decisions driven by dollars and not by the patient's needs. Hospitals say that the cuts are necessary to cope with the less funding. CEOs who claim that RN cuts will not affect patient care, quite frankly, are not being truthful. These cuts directly affect patients. High-quality patient care is compromised. Regional mental health, London Health Science Centre, you heard the parade of cuts. It's all across, in small communities and large. Workloads increase. Not only will these cuts affect patients directly serviced by our hospitals and communities, but it's the entire catchment areas that are serviced by these hospitals. It means canceled surgeries, longer wait times for care. The stories of patient care and patients experiences that have been shared with us today absolutely breaks our hearts. If you decrease a staff nurse, you decrease nursing hours at the bedtime, and it affects all of us. It's time to demand the right funding for our hospital to provide the care that you and your families deserve. It's time to fund the care we need in southwestern Ontario. ONA will continue to advocate for safe patient care because optimal nursing care means improved health care and a healthier population. If we stand together, we're stronger together. Our voices are louder together. And together, we are stronger. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. There's another voice from the front line. Again, how much more truthful can that be, or as our other friends in the state say, truthiness? We are going to have to amend our agenda somewhat today because A, I think that we're running short on time. B, I think there's heat prostration taking over half the crowd. So we are going to go into a little uplifting sing-along with Lean on Me, and then we'll continue on with our agenda. By way of housekeeping, I would encourage each and every one of you to sign one of our floating balloons over here. We will be